Proper Context Media, we back. You know what it is. It's Musa. We can get to the root. There's no need to cater to the branches. So, how y'all doing today? Today I want to talk about a couple of things. Today I'm going to start a series on the lies told about yourself, slavery, and the African diaspora in general, African culture, and all of that. Because over the years, they didn't taught us a lot of things and misappropriated a lot of things as far as the African people, as far as slavery and everything else. And along those lines, especially about ourselves, African people, Black people, we've lost our definition of who we were to the point where we fell into the description of who we were, and that shaped who we are today. And that's a shame, man. I'm here to dispel some of the lies, here to give some of the history, and because they told you were primitive people in Africa, that you didn't have anything. They told you Columbus sailed here in 1492, slavery started in 1619, and it went on for 246 years until Abraham Lincoln signed emancipation and went to Jim Crow segregation, and Malcolm said by any means, Rosa sat down, Martin stood up, JFK signed the crime bill, civil rights bill, now everything's supposed to be good. Well, we're going to dispel some of them rumors, some of them lies. So, let's get into it. You know what it is, Proper Context Media. So, the first thing that I want to speak about, before we get into all of this stuff, I have to tell you, this is going to be a series about slavery. It's going to be about racism. It's going to be about the system of white supremacy. We're going to talk about the kingdoms, the great kingdom of Africa. We're going to talk about the tribes of Africa. We're going to talk about people say the Africans were selling each other. We're going to talk about that. The rumor that slavery started in 1619, which is not true. We're going to talk about the Haitian Revolution with Toussaint Louverture and Jean-Jacques Dessalines. We're going to talk about the first Americans. We're going to talk about Jim Crow, the system of systematic and economic genocide, social, economic, psychological effects. We're going to talk about a lot of stuff. But I do want to warn you, if you have some type of sentiment or love for the Europeans, or this might not be the channel for you. This channel is for my people. And I know that everybody was slaves and everybody's good people, and some people good people and some people not good people. Well, I don't care. I'm only can be concerned about my people, because y'all haven't been concerned about us. And you put system and policies in place where we wasn't even concerned about ourselves. And I know people going to say every other people were slaves. Yes. But it's three things that make African slavery and Black people slavery different from any slavery in history. The first thing is the dehumanization. We had to fight for the right to be considered human before we ever fought for the right of freedom. Understand that. Understand the dehumanization of your ancestors to tell them that they were, and this was codified action. This was actually a case in the Supreme Court, Dred Scott versus United States, when he was in a free state and he was still a slave with his master, and they said, we can't give you any laws under the Constitution because we don't view you as human, we view you as property like cattle. So we were even humans to them. We had to fight for the right to be considered human before we ever fought for the right of freedom. That's one thing. Two, your inability to gain knowledge was codified into law, which means you wasn't able to learn. There's no civilization or no person in history that was not able to gain knowledge or could be killed for learning the alphabet. Why? Because education, it should be a right, is a human right. It should be a human right to educate yourself. You could be killed for learning the alphabet. You could be killed for walking around with a book if they found a book on you. So that's number two. So you got the fact that we were dehumanized, and excuse me, the fact that they wouldn't allow us to, to be literate or even learn the alphabet, read, or gain any type of knowledge of ourselves. As a matter of fact, the only thing we know about ourselves is what they told us. And the number three thing that separates slavery, our slavery, from everybody else's, is the whole world benefited from us except for us. The whole world, the entire world, benefited off the transatlantic slave trade. The entire world. We're talking about everybody except for the enslaved Africans in the African continent, the Arabs, Indians, Europeans, everyone. Everyone benefited from it. So those three things is what make our slavery totally different. It's a lot of other things too, but those are the major things. It makes our slavery different from others. Now, as I said, the only thing we know about ourselves is what they told us. And I'm here to change that, because they told you that you were primitive people, that y'all was just running around in the African bush with spears, trying to hunt lions and living with the chimps and all of the extra stuff. But what they didn't tell you that it was great African kingdom. They didn't tell you that it was a person from Africa that was considered the richest man in the history of the world. They didn't tell you that it was cities paved with gold, that it was a African city they called the African Atlantis. They didn't tell you that it was warrior cultures and great tribes and stuff like that. And this is what we need to know, because you don't know this about yourself. The only thing you know about yourself is what they told you. We had great kingdoms like the Kush Empire. Now, a lot of people think Kush is just marijuana, but the Kushites was a great empire that spanned for hundreds of years. Modern Sudan, the Kushites were one of the greatest empires the world has ever seen. Right there in Sudan was the Kush Empire and the Nubian Empire. Now, I know you didn't hear growing up, oh, look at my Nubian queen. Now, which is great, because the Nubians was from Sudan, and it was an actual tribe and an actual empire. You had, of course, Mansa Musa, the richest man to ever walk the earth, who they say had half $500 billion. Imagine having $500 billion. Elon Musk, or Elon Musk, what he got, 88 million or something like that. Imagine having $500 billion and giving away 100 million on your way to make pilgrimage in Mecca. Gave $100 million in gold away to Egypt, which crippled their economy for 10 years. But even then, with the Mali Empire, with Mansa Musa, after they failed, then you had the Songhai Empire, which was in Mali again. You had the Ghana Empire. You had great tribes from the Mali Empire, the Dogon, the Yoruba, all of the Igbo. You had a lot of great tribes. The Zulus down in Southern Africa. Everybody's heard of Shaka Zulu. The Zulu was a whole nation. Where South Africa is right now is where the Zulu land was. We have the Ashanti tribes, the Igbo. Don't forget about the Coastal Empire down in Southern Africa as well. The Congolese Empire. The Mutapa Empire, which is present-day Zimbabwe. Abyssinia, which can be traced back in the first king of Abyssinia, which is around Somalia. Then the first king of there, it was Ethiopia. The first king of there was a direct descendant of King Solomon. It's great things that have. They say listen, before they changed in 325, before they changed the Bible, and said that Jesus was born in the manger, the whole world thought Jesus was born in the cave in Ethiopia. So, we got this great tribe. Song like the Queen Zinga from Angola. It's a lot. It's a lot of people. Even the Congolese Empire, Alfonso I, one of the greats, one of our great African revolutionaries, who was one of the first people to fight off the slave traders when they entered into his kingdom in Congo. When they entered into the Congo trying to take slaves, he was one of the first ones to fight against them, and that's going to be a major thing when we get to the point of them saying blacks telling blacks, which is not all the way false, but it's not all the way true either. So we have these great empires and the knot culture. So let's talk about the knot culture, which is you know what I mean. The knot culture was a culture from some people say it was 1500 BC. Was from the most accurate record I know is 900 BC to 200 AD. And the knot culture was talking about 900 BC or 1500 BC. These people who had a judicial system with higher and lower courts to deal with crimes from murder to theft. 900 BC. They had court systems in place to deal with, they had a whole judicial system. Then you have the land of Punt, which was called the Atlantis of Africa. This modern day Somalia. We have great kingdoms. We have to be proud of who we were. See, the only reason that we are proud of who we were because we don't know who we were. And what they told you are shaped who you are today. And I'm here to tell you, brothers and sisters, that Africa was a great, great, great thriving nation. And the African continent is the only continent on earth that can be self-sufficient, that wouldn't need any other continent because of his resources that they have in the soil and in the ground. Now, Europeans, which is right above Africa, don't have a lot of resources. So what did they do? They seen a continent with a whole bunch of African people, and they went down to try to steal their resources, and they have been doing it ever since. So this is one of those things where you got to know your history. You have to know your history. The great Marcus Garvey always talked about going back to Africa or the civilizations of Africa. Great things with our people, but we would never know that because, for one, we have a tradition of not looking in the book because we wasn't allowed to for 400 years. You understand? So for 400 years, you wasn't allowed to educate yourself. But I tell you this, brothers and sisters, when we was able to educate ourselves, guess what? We had black towns, black banks, black doctors within 12 years of not being able to educate ourselves for 492 years. All of a sudden, we got black towns and black banks, black hospitals, black schools. Why? Why? Because we are the original people of the earth, and it is nothing that's going to hold the original people back. But the only problem is that the dominant white majority continues to subjugate and disenfranchise us for their own personal gain. It's time. I'm going through these series because I want you to know that you are great people. Not just we know about the Mandinka people, which is what people call them Mandingos, but the Mandinka people. We know about Queen Nzinga, who fought off the Europeans for 40 years, and it was a queen in Angola. We have warrior culture, Shaka Zulu and the Mutapa Empire, and these great warrior cultures. Even the Dahomey, which is the Fawani tribe, the Fawn tribe, and the Dahomey, they just made a movie about the Women King, which was so inaccurate. And yes, they participated in the slave trade, but they neglected to tell you about the times and the years that they fought against the Europeans. Because yes, they did. They absolutely did participate in the slave trade when they had to, because it was either you're going to capture these slaves or we're going to take you as them. But that's not the issue. The issue is that they highlight a part of the history, or highlight a part of a couple of 100 years where it was compulsory for some of the things that happened, and try to make us responsible for our own oppression, which is absolutely ridiculous. So we have to know who we are. We have to know what's going on. So I'm going to be going through some of these things. We're going to dig into the Haitian Revolution and Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and some of the great people. We're going to talk about, like I just said, Queen and Thing. We're going to talk about Shaka Zulu, and we're going to talk about the Abyssinian Empire. We're going to talk about the Xhosa people, the Igbo, who walked into the ocean and rather drown than to go into slavery. Yes, we're going to talk about the Axum Empire in Ethiopia, some of the great Ethiopian empires. We're going to talk about that. Brothers and sisters, you need to be proud to be African. What we need to do is appreciate each other. We need to appreciate being African. Brothers and sisters in America, y'all are African. You're not African American because the adjectives precede the noun. So that would mean that they would be describing you as, and you would never be American. They always told you was a resident. I just cited the case, Dred Scott versus the United States. You will never be, you're not a citizen. You're a resident. And that's the reason where they haven't had one singular bill for African Americans. Yes, civil rights. They coupled that with the minority movements and the women's liberation movement. As a matter of fact, the minority movement with the Spanish people came in, the Puerto Ricans and stuff came in and undercut the civil rights movement, and they gave everybody the rights that was supposed to be due to black people. Gave everybody the rights, and we ended up getting the least end of the rights. And they just took, and we're gonna speak on affirmative action in this series too, and all of that. So at the end of the day, I hear people saying, "Oh, the Puerto Ricans, they black." Some of them are. We have Afro Latinos, and salute to them. But those aren't the ones I'm talking about. I'm talking about the Puerto Ricans the Puerto Ricans and the Mexicans and the Arabs and all of them, and the Chinese. The Puerto Ricans went to court just like the Chinese did to try to get classified under being white. But we still say that the Puerto Ricans is black. You still let them say the N-word. They're all in our communities, but they don't never stand up for black issues. We never see them at the rallies with us. They be all gathered at the Puerto Rican Day Parade, but they say our language. They take in our culture, and while at the same time taking away from our rights. Y'all want to be buddy with all of these other cultures and all these other people, and all these other people are doing everything to get our rights. Look at the Chinese. And the United States just showed you is a difference between being minority and being black, because they used the Chinese people, another minority group, to subjugate African Americans in regards to affirmative action in the universities. In the university, they just had a Supreme Court ruling that said that no more affirmative action in the school system. Why? Because the Chinese went there and saying we can't get no spots because y'all giving it to the black people, even though the enrollment for Asians is substantially higher for Asians than it is for black people. But affirmative action was supposed to be corrective action for 400 plus years of not allowing us to educate ourselves, to work, affirmative action to work. Y'all created unions to keep us out of work. That's where unions came from, because y'all was releasing 4 million Africans. After slavery, y'all was releasing 4 million Africans onto the continent, and they had all the skills. So y'all created unions to keep us from working, to keep us disenfranchised. So same thing with the Chinese. Now the same thing with all of these other groups that are using the things that's supposed to be the things that's supposed to be allocated for the Africans or to the black people, and they're coming in with their minority movements and this and that, and they are taking the bulk of our rights. Affirmative action, they gave women, well, white women, being a minority group, middle class white women was a minority group, and they benefited from affirmative action way more than any other group. Do you understand? So it's a difference between minority and being black. We need to focus on our people, but first we need to know who we are. We need to know that we descended from kings and queens, and our history did not start in slavery, and slavery did not start in 1619, and that which would be mathematically impossible, because we know in 1503 they had slaves in Haiti. We were the first people in Americas. Columbus, the only reason he knew how to get that there was a world in the Western Hemisphere was because of the Africans in the Canary Islands, when he was there helping the Spanish enslave the Africans, the West Africans in the Canary Islands in 1482. 1492, they washed up on the shores of Brazil. He's never stepped foot on the North American continent, but y'all celebrate him every year, Columbus Day. The only place he's been to was Brazil, Haiti, and Jamaica, and up and down in the Caribbean. He's never stepped foot in the North American continent, but y'all celebrate Columbus Day every single year. And we know that the reason that he got to America was because the Africans told him about the Guinea current.
There are 3 belts that leave the coast of Africa. There's one that's in the north, there's one in the middle, and there's one in the south. When you look at this middle one literally will take you right into the Gulf of Mexico, even if you didn't have power boat. And what's going to happen is the Africans are going to start to move into this area here, and they're going to begin to settle in this corner of the Gulf of Mexico. They're going to develop, according to what our research shows, 3 major cities: Tres Zapotes, San Lorenzo, okay, and La Venta.
See, everybody thought the world was flat, but the Africans was already going over to America. As a matter of fact, they taught him about the currency. And while in his journal on his way there, he encountered a group of Africans on the way back from America. When he got to America, the people that when he got to Jamaica, and he encountered the Arawak and the Taino people, they told them that the dark-skinned people with the gold-tipped spears have been coming to trade with us for hundreds of years. And then the Spanish went to Haiti and single-handedly destroyed the Taino population, which was our brothers, our African brothers and sisters. And then the Arawak, and they killed all of them in Jamaica and in the Caribbean. It's been a lot of death and destruction, and I'm telling you, we came from great civilization. The Taino people was a great, proud people. The Arawak was trading with our people, who gave us trade routes and to get to other parts of the Western Hemisphere. It's been, we have discovered everything. It was a time in history where it was no other people outside of the continent of Africa. So that means that we populated every single area of the world, every single corner of the world. And we're going to get to that and how white people even came about and all of that stuff. But for now, this is just part 1. Y'all know what it is. Proper Context Media. Be proud of being Black. Be proud of being African. Salute.